let the others join, inshallah, then we will officially begin. Okay. Okay. चलें जी, कौन आ गया देख लें. चलें जी, once again, everybody who has joined, assalamu alaikum. Good to see you, a long time. Okay. चलें जी, मैं ज़रा WhatsApp ग्रुप पे भी मैसेज मार दूं कि प्लीज ज्वाइन फॉर दोज ऑफ यू. वैसे तो मैं मैसेज नहीं करता होता, लेकिन वीक ओके शुरू है. So, वैसे I usually give reminders every day when I have lesson. So that should do. चलें जी, बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, शुरू करते हैं. Okay, let's quickly go through of all what we went talked about stuff the other day. So we talked about the cells and their functions, their parts in detail, and the fact that they're three-dimensional, and we went into details of all of the functions, similarities, differences, and then we talked about the idea of photomicrographs and all of that stuff. Okay, आज inshallah हम, and then I stopped at specialized cells, and अपना आप में से किसी का माइक मेरे ख्याल से अनम्यूटेड है. मैं आपको रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि अपना अपना माइक म्यूट कर लें, so that inshallah my voice does not echo now. कोई question है तो I mean you're more than welcome to unmute and tell me. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to look at today is we're going to talk about the two specialized cells that are included in our syllabus. Yes, I have them prepared with me in the slides also, lekin I am going to resort to drawing and explaining them manually first, inshallah, and then we are going to see accordingly. All right, so the first specialized cell that we are going to talk about is known as none other than the red blood cell. So if I were to draw a typical red blood cell, I'm drawing a red blood cell with the green color. How good is this? Second, red say draw kar lete hain. So if that's how the red blood cell looks like, so this dotted thing is actually not the nucleus. So that's how the cross section would look like. Okay, yep, that's how it is. Okay, so before I jump on to what we need to know about this, let's talk about the function of the red blood cell. So if I were to ask any one of you, I hope you don't mind telling me, what exactly is the function of a red blood cell? Sabne join kar liya hai? Okay, great. Yes. Anybody who would like to tell me?
Transport of oxygen.
Transport of oxygen. एक second. हादिया की हम आ गई हैं, चले. Link. असल में मैं, okay, just for the sake of your information, class, I will always be using the same PMI and Zoom password. So every time I won't be giving you the link. So you just have to remember the PMI and the password, okay? So just keep that in mind, okay? All right. All right, so yes, exactly. As you rightly said, the function is to transport oxygen. Transport oxygen around the body, of course, to different parts of the cells. Now, what we have to understand is we have to relate the structure of the red blood cell with the function, okay? We have to relate the structure with the function. क्या मतलब? We are going to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify different structural features, okay? So I'm going to make a bubble, structural features, and I'm going to identify some important features that the red blood cell will have, and then we will try to relate all of those individual structural features with the function which we now know is to transport oxygen, okay? So the very first and the most important feature that we need to know about the red blood cell is that it is biconcave in shape, biconcave shaped. क्या मतलब? What does that mean by concave shape? See, you need to understand, biconcave is basically, if you look at the diagram, I've drawn arrows that is representing the edges, okay? So if I say that biconcave means the following: thicker at the edges and thinner in the middle, okay? Thinner in the middle. And that is exactly how you would describe in words what biconcave shape means, okay? So in the cross section, this is basically how it appears. I mean, of course, the reason I've drawn dotted lines here, the reason that I'm shading as green is representing the thin part of the red blood cell. And of course, all of this region is representing the thick part, okay? That's basically how it is. And by the way, as a side note, that's one of the reasons if you look at a real photomicrograph, the middle portion would actually appear brighter. And the reason for this is because light tends to pass through this thin region and not that easily through the thick region, okay? Anyhow, so that's one structural feature of, oops, coffee motor. Let me correct the size. So there you go. Okay, so that's number one. That's the first feature. The second feature that we are going to talk about is the presence of hemoglobin. I'm sorry if I'm getting the spellings of hemoglobin as incorrect. It's He-H-E-A, we like the presence of hemoglobin. That's the other structural feature. The third structural feature that we are going to understand is spongy cytoplasm and flexible cell membrane. Okay, that's another feature. Yet another feature of the red blood cell is the absence of, excuse me, is the absence of nucleus. Okay. Acha, nucleus ke alawa, there is another thing that it does not have, and mitochondria. There's no mitochondria in the red blood cell. Okay. Okay, so yeah, these are more or less the features that we need to know about the red blood cell. Now the question is, now I'm going to use an orange ink, okay, inshallah, to relate all of these features with the function. So, I mean, what do I mean relating the structure with the function? They came. We've understood what the function, excuse me, what the function is to transport oxygen. Now the question is, how does, for example, the presence of hemoglobin help in the function? Well, the answer is simple. Hemoglobin represented by HB combines, sorry, it combines with oxygen to form, what's the name? Come on, give me the name. Oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so that's basically how, so what I've written in green is the structure, and what I'm writing in orange, I'm relating that structure to the function. Biconcave shape. How does the fact that it is biconcave in shape help in the function? The answer is, come on, I want anybody to tell me in the class. Main to bata hi dunga, but I want you to tell me. Come on, shabash.
Sir, to provide more surface area.
Is that what you're going to write, inshallah? That's it. देखिए ये सबको पता होता है. You have to understand that this increases not only the surface area, but increases the surface area to volume ratio. देखिए, we need to understand this. If I'm just talking about the surface area, that is just the surface area. Surface area to volume ratio ka matlab hai you are calculating the surface area of that figure, and you are calculating the volume, and you are dividing the surface area with the volume. Okay. So biconcave shape increases the surface area to volume ratio, but that does not complete the answer. What benefit does that give to the red blood cell? Well, the benefit is that that increases the rate of oxygen absorption. क्या मतलब? If the red blood cell would not have been biconcave, for example, let's consider if the shape would have been like this, okay? So this is not biconcave. If oxygen was being absorbed in 5 minutes, for example, in the cell, then being biconcave actually reduces the time. Maybe now in asal mein it should not be minutes. Minutes is too far-fetched. It's actually seconds, okay? So let's make it seconds. बल्कि होगा milliseconds में भी होगा, लेकिन the point is we don't need to know the time. We're just trying to make sense. There's one misunderstanding that students have. Some students think that increases the surface area to volume ratio increases the amount of oxygen it can carry. That is incorrect. It only increases the speed. So the time factor increase as in decreases, okay? So that increases the rate of absorption. You can write it this way. Okay? Okay. Now, being spongy in cytoplasm and flexible in cell membrane, how on earth does that facilitate its function? Well, the idea is very simple. That allows it to squeeze through narrow capillaries, and reach cells. So it can literally squeeze through all of the different areas and reach the different cells, okay? And of course, you have the absence of nucleus and mitochondria. How does absence of nucleus facilitate? Well, that increases room for hemoglobin. So अगर nucleus नहीं है तो उसकी जगह hemoglobin होगा. And if there's more hemoglobin, then of course there will be more oxyhemoglobin, okay? All right, mitochondria. Mitochondria. Again, we can use the same line of argument for mitochondria, but there's another reason why not having a mitochondria or the absence of mitochondria is actually facilitating the transport of oxygen. Can anybody tell me what that is? I usually give an example for this.
Sir, mitochondria is like it uses energy. That's why.
Okay, देखिए मैं आपको इसकी एग्जांपल देता हूँ. अगर मैं पिज्जा डिलीवरी बॉय होता तो I would have been the worst on the job. Do you know why? Because मैं रास्ते में खोल के बीच में से I would have picked olives and maybe picked chicken and eaten. So I would have been the worst person to do pizza deliveries, okay? Because I really like pizzas, okay? And how good is this? Since the past 2 or 3 days, I've eaten so much pizza that I actually started hating pizza, which is very strange. But that hate will just go away in a matter of days, inshallah. I will start loving the pizzas back. Anyhow, you know, if mitochondria is there, mitochondria would actually use up oxygen. Mitochondria, aapko pata hai ki it's basically the site where respiration happens, so it actually needs oxygen. So if there is mitochondria in the red blood cell, then the mitochondria will start using the oxygen which was supposed to be transported to the other parts. So absence of mitochondria not uses oxygen. Okay? So these are the ways in which you can relate the structure of the structural features of the red blood cell with its function. Okay, ji? So that's the first idea. The second idea that we're going to talk about today is another specialized cell, which is the root hair cell. Let me go back to the, I hope all of you received the slides, okay? Again, look at this red blood cell. All of what I've explained is actually given here in the form of a table. So inshallah, you can view that. So let's go to the epithelial cells. Okay, let's first talk about epithelial cells. Epithelial cells are basically found in different parts. Majority of the time they're found in the breathing pipe. That's the trachea. Inshallah, we will talk in detail about them when we do that topic. But you need to understand that these are cells which have these hair-like projections, okay? You just use the word hair-like projections just to explain. They're not hairs, okay? And they beat rhythmically, as in either direction or left or right, to basically they trap the mucus and the bacteria, or when you clear your throat like this, they literally push the mucus on top. Inshallah, this is going to be talked about in detail once we do that topic. I just wanted to touch on this. But what we need to know is what this cell is all about, which is the root hair cell. So what I'll do is I'll quickly take a snapshot of this and paste it on the next page that I'm using so that you can have them as consolidated notes. once and for all. Okay, Shirley. So the next thing that we are talking about is none other than the lovely root hair cell. Or is, I mean, you will, these two cells, especially the root hair cell, it will come quite often again and again, since we have topics like plant nutrition, plant transport. So you really need to understand this. Okay, now let's quickly label this entire cell. So this entire cell, of course, is known as the root hair cell. This portion of the root hair cell is known as the root hair. And this is the reason why we're calling this cell as the root hair cell, because of this projection, okay? And then you have the nucleus, of course, and then that's the cell wall, if you like. And on the inside, of course, you have the cell membrane. And then this is something, you can see lots and lots of mitochondria, and we will talk about that why there are lots and lots of mitochondria present in the root hair cell. And this thing on the inside is the cell vacuole, of course, filled with cell sap. We talked about this the other day. Then, of course, you have the cytoplasm. Oh, there's one very important thing that the plant cells are supposed to have that this root hair does not have. Root hair cell does not have. Can anybody tell me what that is?
Chloroplast.
No chloroplast. Why no chloroplast? Well, because these root hair cells are there down in the soil. Sunlight will not reach them in the first place, so they don't photosynthesize. So they don't need chloroplast. That's why there's no chloroplast. This is very important. You need to remember this. Despite of the fact that they're plant cells, they don't have chloroplasts. Now, again, if I were to ask you what is the function of the root hair cells, then your answer will be absorption of two things. Number one, water. Number two, mineral salts. Okay, but there's something more that we need to know about this. Osmosis is going to happen by the process, water is going to be absorbed by the process of osmosis. Of course, the detail of which we will see tomorrow, inshallah, once we begin that topic. And mineral salts is done by active transport. Again, what is active transport? Inshallah, we will be talking about that in our tomorrow's lesson. Anyhow, that's what you need to remember. Now, the point is, if that is the function, then how do the structural features, they facilitate this function? So, you know, one of the things that stands out in this structure is actually, so let's identify the structural features once again. So let me make a bubble for this also. Structural features. I don't like red color. Let me change the color of my ink. That's the green color. Okay, बच्चों, आप लोग बोर तो नहीं हो रहे? Is everybody understanding what I'm trying to explain? Come on, give me a good guess.
Yes, sir.
Great. Great. All right. So structural features. The first and the most prominent feature that we can identify in the root hair cell is actually the root hairs themselves. So that's number one, the presence of root hair, which is basically the following thing that I'm going to highlight with yellow color. Let me do that for you so that it makes it prominent. This entire thingy that I'm shading as yellow is known as the root hair. And that's where the name of the cell is coming from, root hair cell. Okay, so again, how does the presence of root hair cells benefit or facilitate the function? Well, the answer is it increases the surface area to volume ratio for quick absorption. Okay, absorption of what? Of course, we've talked about that, absorption of water and mineral ions. Okay, of course, by their respective processes, which is osmosis and active transport. Acha ji. Then there is a second very prominent feature, that is large number of mitochondria. Large number of mitochondria. Again, this is a structural feature which we need to understand, that how on earth does the fact that it has a very large number of mitochondria, how does that relate to the function? Well, the answer is, you know, I said that this, the absorption of mineral salts
Active
is
transport के लिए.
Shabash, is done by active transport. So active transport requires energy. So let me write that down here. Mineral salts, we know are absorbed by active transport, and active transport requires energy, which comes from respiration, which is released from respiration, which we know happens in the mitochondria. Okay, so that's the line of argument that we need to understand. It has large number of mitochondria, and there's yet another. वैसे तो inshallah only these two will suffice in the exam. The examiner is not fond of going into other details, but still we need to know this. You know, the cell wall is very thin. Okay, it has a thin cell wall. Now, the fact that it has a thin cell wall, by the way, aap mein se, I hope all of you are like pizzas. How many of you like thin crust and thick crusts? I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm giving examples of pizzas, but Anji, thick crust. Come on, tell me, thick crust wale kaun se hain?
Me. It's way better.
Yeah, yeah, you feel like something you're eating at least something. I mean, thin crust is honestly, it's a joke. Okay.
Yeah, you could eat so much of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can anyway eat so much of whatever you get, as far as it's the pizza. I mean, honestly. Actually, so you need to understand thin, the fact that the cell wall is thin, that has to do something with the distance that the things can travel. You can clearly see that the water and the mineral salts they have. I mean, imagine this cell wall, this portion that I'm encircling, instead of being this much in thickness, it's this much in thickness. I mean, of course, the difference that it would make will be the fact that it's thin cell wall, it basically offers a short diffusion distance for gases, okay, which otherwise would have been large, and then it would have taken a lot of time, and that's not what we want, okay. And then there's another thing that maybe you need to know, and that is that the cell membrane has, okay, I think I should not go in that detail. Mere notes mein likh diya, lekin only these three should inshallah suffice. Okay, so that's how the structure of the cell wall, the structure of the root hair cell is related to its function. Okay, so that's the second most important a cell, specialized cell, if you like, that we need to talk about in the first topic. Now, the next thing that we need to know is actually a tissue, and it is none other than the xylem, the detail of which we are going to go into details of, inshallah, when we do transport in plants. Lekin since it's included in this topic, so let's just talk about that, okay? So, coming back to this slide, the function of xylem, everybody knows, I'm supposing everybody knows, I mean, of course you guys know, but xylem and phloem are two vessels in the plants that carry water and nutrients respectively. Xylem is there for carrying water and mineral salts, and phloem for nutrients. And of course, we are going to talk about details of this, but that's beyond the scope of our class today. We are just trying to understand that xylem is a tissue and how does that function. So there are two functions that the xylem has, as you can see on the screen. Number one, it transports water and mineral salts, okay? And that's the main function, if you like. But another very important added function is it actually gives strength, or you can say mechanical support to the plants. Yani the reason why you can see plants upright is because of the fact that they have this thing in them that is giving them strength. And that thing in them is known as lignin. Okay. Now, lignin can be deposited in many different ways. If you look at this diagram, you can see these white thingies on the inside that I'm encircling with green now. They are lignin depositions. This fashion is known as the spiral way of lignin depositing. And this, the second way, where you can only see rings of lignin, you call this thing as annular. Okay, yeah, ring bhi keh dete hain isko. Let me write that down for you also, just in case. And then there's a third that you can't see in this you actually can see in this diagram. Look at this one. all of the inner side is coated with lignin except for few places that you can see as white dots. This format is known as the pitted format. Let me repeat, what is pitted? All of the inner side of the xylem is deposited with lignin except for few windows here and there. I mean, don't call them windows in the exam, please. I'm just using that to explain. These are known as the pits, okay, where you don't have lignin. Otherwise, the entire thingy is with lignin. As you can see, this next thing that I'm labeling as B, this is uh, annular or ring, or you just C label around. This is spiral. Okay, so again, this is a real photomicrograph in which you can see that this is a xylem. Now let's look at how the structure of the xylem is related to its function. Okay, now the first point, as you can see, is that xylem happens to be a long continuous tube starting from roots and continues up to the stem. Okay, the fact that it's a long continuous tube means that water can easily travel. If it yani कि what I mean by continuous, what I mean by continuous is that there are no obstructions in between. Yani कि रास्ता खुला है. I mean, the water can easily travel from the roots, even if you have a tree that is literally 50-40 feet of height. Okay. Number two, there are no cross walls. What do I mean by cross walls? See, you need to understand, xylem once upon a time was just a stack of cells that were piled up on top of one another. And then these cells, they became specialized. How did they become specialized? The contents of the cell they started losing the contents of the cell. That includes the nucleus, the cell walls, and all of that stuff. Okay. And eventually what happened was even the cross walls. What are the cross walls? You know, the point where one cell meets the other, that's where their cell walls, they come on top of one another. This is known as the cross wall. But during the course of formation of a xylem vessel, even these cross walls were lost. So that's what it means when it says that there are no cross walls. And by the way, I mean, imagine if there are cross walls, then how do you expect the flow of water to be consistent? Because water needs to flow. And if water needs to flow and if they have cross walls, then guess what? That will be an obstruction. So there are no cross walls, which means it is continuous throughout its length in the stem. The third feature that you need to remember is that it is hollow, which means it has no protoplasm. Protoplasm ka matlab hai cytoplasm, nucleus, and nucleoplasm, and all of that stuff. So there's no protoplasm, so there's no obstruction. Water can go with the flow. Number four, cells join end to end. That's exactly what I mean. Cells on top of one another, but you don't have their cross walls. They're gone. They went through this process of specialization. Of course, the details of which you don't need to know. But again, they went through specialization and eventually became a hollow pipe. So this diagram that you can see, once upon a time was cells stacked on top of one another like this. And they went through all of this change and all of what you can see happened. Okay. Acha ji. Then they have lignified internal walls, as I explained, either pitted, circular, or spiral. And lignin is thickly deposited on the internal walls of the xylem vessels. I want you to look at this diagram. Look at this diagram. How can I identify from this diagram that this is a xylem vessel? Well, because of this, it's not thick. Look at the way they've drawn this red thingy, so thick. This thickening is representative of xylem, of lignin. Okay, so one of the ways in which you can identify xylem is clearly because of the very thick outline it has. Okay, and last but not the least, lignin is a dead material. It's not living, and that's why, by the way, xylem is a dead vessel. Unlike phloem, which has living cells, xylem does not have living cells. So these are 8 points, structural features that relate to its function. I've deliberately put different colors on these keywords so that it's easy for you to remember, inshallah, once I share this file with you at the end of the lesson today. Okay, and again, importance of lignin as a separate subtopic. Lignin itself strengthens the xylem vessels. It prevents the collapse of xylem vessels. I mean, why is a plant standing the way it is upright? Because lignin is preventing it from falling down. That's what I mean when I say it prevents collapsing. it prevents tearing of plants. बहुत तेज हवा चलती है लाहौर में वैसे बहुत मुझे समझ नहीं आ रही वैसे I hope all of you would agree. I mean honestly इस दफा the weather of Lahore is very strange. सर्दी आ नहीं रही. I mean it should be very cold but it's really not cold. I literally at the moment my forehead is थोड़ा सा sweating. I mean I know that sounds strange but that's how it is. क्या ख्याल है ये मुझे ही सिर्फ इस तरह मौसम का कुछ लग रहा है या फिर all of you can feel that? बच्चों क्या ख्याल है?
I live in Riyadh. It's like sweating over here. Still hot.
Yeah. Saudi, we can relate to Saudi. So we're not talking about Saudis. We're talking about Pakistan, especially Lahore. Yeah, but it can get slightly pleasant in December, even in Saudi. Isn't that
Yeah,
the
at
case?
the end though. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end. At the end. Okay. Anyhow, challenging. And then finally, it keeps the leaf spread. The reason why you can see the leaf spread out is again because of some xylem. How exactly is xylem distributed in the leaf? Inshallah, when we do plant nutrition, we're going to look at that in detail. So to summarize, what we've seen so far is basically we've talked about the red blood cell, how the function, how the structural features that relate to the function. We've talked about the root hair cells, and then we've talked about xylem vessels. Now, quickly, we are going to go into our traditional 1-minute break. I want all of you to get up, leave your seats, take a walk, come back after a minute. It's exactly 8:33. I'm going to restart around 8:34-ish, 5-ish, inshallah. Ending the session, please rejoin in a minute, or I'll exactly start at 35. So it's not a very long break. Just go get a glass of water, take a walk, and then come back.